We're in Cape Canaveral, Florida, and this is where the last battle of the American Revolution took place. It was on March 10th, 1783 that the USS Alliance fought the H.M.S. Sybil. We're going to take a look at the battlefield, which is off the coast here of Cape Canaveral, and we're going to discuss the events leading up to the battle and the battle itself. So come join us. So near the end of the American Revolutionary War in 1782, Continental Army officers had gone 2 years without receiving pay, and the Continental Army was in danger of mutiny. So General George Washington, commander of the Continental Army, warned Alexander Hamilton that disbanding the Continental Army without granting back pay would produce civil commotion and end in blood. The Continental Congress did not give serious consideration to issuing back pay to Continental Army until the officers of the Continental Army sent its address and petition to the Continental Congress in late 1782, in which they demanded back pay and pensions. On January 13th, 1783, the Continental Congress appointed a subcommittee made up of Alexander Hamilton, John Rutledge, to hear the Continental Army grievances and report their findings to Robert Morris, the Superintendent of Finance. On January 10th, 1783, Robert Morris received a letter from Major General Nathaniel Greene, commander of the Southern Army, stating that he had granted advances to his officers. Morris was disturbed that Greene had not consulted with him first, because he was now forced to make a similar payment to the Northern armies. Robert Morris, who was not only Superintendent of Finance, but also Agent of Marine, had already begun secret negotiations with French connections to secure money for the Continental Army and means to transport it. On September 24th, 1782, Morris had sent a letter to his private bankers in Europe, La Couture and Company in Paris, to secure bills of exchange to be sold in Havana, Cuba for silver dollars. As a backup, Morris wrote to the American ambassador in Paris, Benjamin Franklin, and asked him to seek an advance on the 1783 French loan. Morris also sent letters overseas to Captain John Barry, commander of the frigate USS Alliance, and Captain John Greene, commander of the Duc de Luzon, for them to immediately sail to Havana, Cuba. Morris also sent letters to Luis de Gonzaga, the new Spanish governor of Cuba, and persuaded the French and Spanish ministers in Philadelphia to write to the governor of Cuba to finalize the deal. Morris's final letter was to Captain John Greene, with secret instructions for carrying out the mission of transporting the silver dollars safely from Havana, Cuba to Philadelphia. In Havana, Barry and Greene agreed that Captain John Greene's 20-gun sloop, Duc de Luzon, would transport the silver coins, and Captain John Barry's 36-gun frigate Alliance would serve as a convoy. Captain John Barry planned to depart from Havana on February 13th, 1783, but was denied permission because the Spanish fleet in Havana was making preparations to attack the British in Jamaica, and no ships were permitted to leave the port until the invasion fleet set out. Captains Barry and Greene were finally permitted to depart from Havana on March 6, 1783, and headed for the Gulf of Florida, a body of water located between the southeast of Florida and the Bahama Islands. Duc de Luzon proved to be heavy laden and slower than Alliance. On March 7, 1783, Captain Barry spotted 2 British ships bearing down on them from the northeast. Barry ordered Greene to sail southeast and seek the protection of the Spanish fleet, reaching the Spanish fleet by nightfall. The next day, on March 8, 1783, Barry and Greene departed from the Spanish fleet and sailed north. On March 9, 1783, the decision was made to transfer most of the silver from the Duc de Luzon to the Alliance. At 6 a.m., on March 10, 1783, while sailing north along the east coast of Florida, Barry and Greene encountered 3 British ships: the H.M.S. Sybil, a 28-gun ship under the command of Captain James Vashon, and H.M.S. Alarm, a 32-gun ship under the command of Captain Charles Cotton. British Captain James Vashon had received intelligence that the Duc de Luzon was carrying specie from Cuba north to America. Barry and Greene again turned and sailed southwest toward the Spanish fleet. But by 9 a.m., Barry observed that the Duc de Luzon was lagging 2 miles behind his Alliance and losing ground. Barry slowed down and conferred with Greene as the American ships came abreast of each other. At 11:30 a.m., H.M.S. Alarm fired a broadside at Alliance, while the other British ship and the H.M.S. Sybil trailed behind with the Duc de Luzon. When H.M.S. Alarm spotted an unidentified approaching ship, it broke off its attack. At noon, H.M.S. Sybil approached behind Duc de Luzon and opened fire. The ships firing at each other, stern to bow. Alliance suddenly changed course to starboard to run between H.M.S. Sybil and the Duc de Luzon. H.M.S. Sybil gave chase. In a daring strategy, Barry reversed the course of the Alliance and waited for the H.M.S. Sybil to make a close approach while under fire from H.M.S. Sybil. Captain John Barry ordered his gunners to reserve your fire until we are close aboard. Don't fire until we are abreast of her. I'll give you the order when we are within half pistol range. A shot from H.M.S. Sybil struck the Alliance's cabin, shattering it to splinters and mortally wounding a U.S. soldier. But Barry continued to hold his fire. When H.M.S. Sybil approached the Alliance abreast, Captain Barry gave the order to fire at point-blank range. Alliance's broadside smashed into H.M.S. Sybil, ripping long splinters from her side, severing her foretop mast with her flag, and tearing her sails and rigging. After nearly half an hour of heated firing, H.M.S. Sybil became a battered wreck, losing her main and fore topsails and suffering significant damage to her hull, and fled to the other 2 British ships as a French 64-gun ship of the line, La Triton, commanded by Captain Comte de Lagondes, approached the battle. Alliance, Duc de Luzon, and La Triton then gave chase to the fleeing British ships until they lost sight of them at nightfall. The H.M.S. Sybil suffered 37 men killed and 40 wounded. Alliance suffered 1 killed and 9 wounded. The next morning, March 11, 1783, the remainder of the silver was transferred entirely to Alliance. Duc de Luzon arrived in Philadelphia on March 19th, but Alliance was forced to change course when chased by 2 British warships, but eventually arrived safely in Newport, Rhode Island on March 20th. This sea battle is regarded as the last battle of the American Revolution. A few days later, on March 23, 1783, a French ship brought news to the United States that a preliminary peace had been agreed to in Europe, thus ending all hostilities. If you enjoyed reliving this last battle of the American Revolution between the H.M.S. Sybil and the American ship Alliance off the coast here at Cape Canaveral, Florida, please click like, subscribe to our channel, and we will see you on our next adventure.